Have you ever failed before? If yes, congratulations. Let's talk about it today on StarRow. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of StarRow. It's your host StarRow. I'm so glad to see you guys again. Sorry about no post on the weekend. Got a little busy there. But anyways, today's topic is why failure can be the best thing ever. Now, failure is something that we've been conditioned to look at with a negative stigma, a negative lens. This could be through schooling, this could be through family, friends, society, social media. And why am I bringing this up? I think we need to challenge ourselves today, and we need to reinterpret the meaning of failure and how it applies to our daily lives. Now, heart failure, right? I'm not saying heart failure is a good thing, right? Or brain failure or any of those kind of failures. I'm talking about failure that's attached to wanting to succeed in a task. Because if I'm not mistaken, failure is defined as a lack of success. So, anyways, to continue on, failure, to me, in my opinion, it is one of the greatest tools that have helped human beings achieve the impossible and the unthinkable. And while I say that, I have to explain that I believe most of the reason why people are unsuccessful in their endeavors is not even because of failure. I actually think it's fear of failure. And I want you to think about that for yourself. Do you think a lot of people who you've noticed that would seem to say they're unsuccessful, is it because they've actually tried, or is it because they fear that if they do try, they'll fail? But anyways, I don't want you to ponder on that right now. I'm going to continue on. I know I asked that if you knew anybody who was thinking like that. However, it could be you. Maybe you're that person who has thought that. But anyways, let's challenge that stigma behind failure. We're going to unpack it, and we're going to reinterpret failure as something that's going to help us get ahead. First, let's look at failure as a teacher. Instead of looking at failure as something that doesn't work, let's look at failure as something to show us what doesn't work. You see the difference? Instead of saying it doesn't work, how about we use failure to show us what doesn't work, how we can refine our approach. Just to give you the simplest example off the top of my head, I was a decent student in school. I wasn't the greatest student. I wasn't the worst student. However, the classes that I got A's in, if I'm being honest with you guys, I didn't learn that much from those classes. Not to say that I didn't enjoy them, not to say that they didn't teach me anything, but because I understood the content and I understood the material very well with a lot of clarity, I didn't learn a lot. When I had a class that I achieved a B or anything lower, those classes honestly taught me the most about myself. It taught me where I was weak, where I needed to work a little harder, and it also just taught me where I was wrong. And we need to hear that we're wrong sometimes, not because it makes us feel good, but because there's a chance for correction. And the chance for correction is ultimately what's going to help you get better. And that's why failure serves as the best teacher. Every single attempt that you make in life, whether it's a success or a failure, it doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, you'll be learning from either or. It's just that when you fail, look at it as this was what didn't work and why did it not work. When you succeed, remember that and say, that worked. Let's try that again. So think of failure as a teacher as to what doesn't work in life, and not about, oh, because I failed, that means it doesn't work. Think about it more as, this didn't work. What can I do to make something work? Also think, the more you do something, the better you get at it. The more you fail at things, the easier it'll be for you. So if you're not used to failing, or trying for that matter, it's going to be really intimidating for you to fail at something. But the more you've tried and the more you failed, the less harsh it's going to feel. And just like anything else in life, the more you do something, the better you get at it. So how would I say this? Instead of saying fail less, let's just say let's fail a little better. Think about it. When we train, right, our bodies, why do they say push your muscles to failure? Ultimately, what that means is that once you fail at something, right, it makes it stronger, right? As the saying goes, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Well, the saying should also go, what you fail at makes you stronger. Now, that wasn't cool enough. Anyways, let's just move on. Let's talk about some famous failures that have happened. And I'm going to try to stray away from the ones that most people hear about, such as Michael Jordan, Albert Einstein, Abraham Lincoln. Those are the big three famous failures that we've heard about. But there's other people who are more recent that are successful in a more contemporary setting that we can address. So let's start with the Dyson vacuum guy. If you guys aren't familiar with Dyson vacuums, that's a very famous vacuum cleaner that gets sold at a lot of department stores. And they have a lot of retail products. The founder of Dyson failed his first prototype 5,126 times. They always like to say Edison failed over 10,000 times. Well, that vacuum guy, that Dyson vacuum that you use, you have to think the man who invented that, he had to fail over 5,000 times to get it right. So literally it's the same thing as Thomas Edison. He might have failed over 5,000 times, but he made 5,000 models that didn't work until he found the right one that worked. Steven Spielberg, a famous movie director, producer, he was rejected from school for film 3 times. So think, everybody who watches movies or is a movie fanatic, you know Steven Spielberg's work from the moment you see his name on the credits. And you have to think, a guy that brilliant with the amount of work that he's contributed to the American entertainment sphere, the fact of the matter is he was rejected 3 times from film school. And you got to think, what's the saying in baseball? 1 strike, 2 strikes, and 3 strikes, you're out. But in this case, he just went back up for another batting session and he clearly hit it out of the park. So let that be another example of a famous person who did not use failure as a way to quit. They used failure as a way to improve. Look at somebody as nimble and as agile and athletic as Simone Biles. She is now considered by many to be the greatest gymnast to ever walk the earth. But nobody talks about the fact that she could not make the junior national team in 2011. And just think, you had a Gabby Douglas who was the gold medalist winner in 2012, if I'm not mistaken. Yes, the 2012 gold medal winner as the first black girl to do that. And think, Simone Biles was a blip on the radar. She wasn't deemed not good enough to make the junior national team. But shortly thereafter, she ends up becoming the greatest gymnast to ever live. Now, if that doesn't tell you that failure doesn't necessarily mean no, it just means try harder, I don't know what else will. So how should you look at failure? Look at failure as feedback and a detour, but not a dead end. Separate yourself from failure. Understand that just because an outcome has occurred, that doesn't define you. One outcome does not define you. Imagine if you buy the lottery and you don't win. That doesn't mean you're a bad person. It just means you weren't chosen. But don't look at that as a failure. Just look at that as an opportunity that was missed, that many more will come by. Always ask what went wrong. Why didn't it work? Understand that sometimes failure could also be teaching you to redirect yourself. So just because something doesn't work or something went wrong, it doesn't mean you're a failure. It just means maybe go a different direction, and that direction will help you get to the place that you're supposed to be. Understand that courage is necessary. It does require courage to fail. So it's not easy, but with courage comes great reward. And always understand that it's the courageous people who usually end up doing the things that a lot of people admire. So you can also be somebody who a lot of people will admire, but just understand that you will need some form of courage in order to get to that next level. Share your failures with other people. A lot of people are out here failing, thinking that they alone are failures. But your inadequacies, your setbacks, may be the very thing that somebody needs to hear. So that way they don't feel excluded or feel isolated with the failing that's been happening in their life. And just think, a lot of the times, we saw in my previous video that there's a friendship recession, right? A lot of people don't have as many friends as they need. But just think, a lot of people need to hear that other people are going through the same thing that they're going through. So when you share your failures, you may be encouraging somebody to understand that they're not alone. And also, too, you may learn something, because sometimes when you share your own failure, somebody might have been where you are and they might have some information to help you get to the next level. Now, I can understand the idea that some people may not be worth sharing the information with because you might perceive them as negative. If you know somebody's negative, then don't discuss it with them. But if it's time for growth, then you have to discuss your setbacks and also encourage the other person to share theirs. So that way we can recognize how much we have in common and how much failing we have left that we can do in order to become a better individual. So just think and understand that just because you failed today, it doesn't mean you're a failure tomorrow or for the rest of your life. It just means there was a lesson to be learned. And just make sure that that lesson becomes the clearest thing to you. Don't take it personal. Ask what went wrong and make sure you write it down so that way you can use it as a tool to help others and to help yourself progress to where you want to be in life. Thank you guys for your time tonight. I really appreciate it. I just wanted to say, make sure you fail hard and you fail better. Don't fail badly, just fail better, okay? All right, thank you guys. This is StarRow. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your evening. And yeah, let me know. Have you ever failed at something? And that thing that you failed at, can you talk about what lesson you've learned from it? Would you please comment down below? And I'd love to read those comments and engage with them. Thank you guys. Have a wonderful rest of your day.